Today I want to talk to you about traditional recovery versus alternative recovery. I am a psychedelic integration coach who specializes in alternative recovery. And for me, I feel like I have created, if you will, my own alternative recovery path that I am really passionate about sharing with others. So my journey probably began when I was younger, right? We're all recovering from something. My heroin addiction was the tip of the iceberg. That was what was visible to the world, right? But it was everything festering underneath that created and led to this addiction, right? So the thing was, I was informed by, lots of therapists since I started going to therapists since I was 5 in, more of a traditional sense, talking to me about childhood traumas that I had endured, which were true and real, and different ways that my parents put their problems on me, just all of this stuff that I should be mad at, right? So finally, as a teenager, I was like, yeah, you're right. Like, I'm mad and, and screaming for attention. But there was so much more going on. So through my experience, not only using heroin and opiates and drugs in general, but also within my alternative recovery path, which is and has been through psychedelic medicine, but has led me to many other practices, breath work, meditation, energy healing, inner child work, yada, yada. So through this experience with this medicine, what I came to discover is that I have always been a very clear vessel and medium and channel. And so the intensity of the emotions and the things that I was feeling and experiencing, what I wanted to be heard about were things that other people couldn't necessarily hear or validate because they weren't experiencing it. So I came to discover that while, yes, my different childhood traumas definitely added to, right? It's not nature versus nurture. They work together, added to my sensitivities and me being more aware of my surroundings in order to protect myself. However, I believe that I chose that. I believe that we all chose that. And so for me, the biggest part of my recovery process has been owning my spiritual gifts. So I know that spirituality is a huge part of traditional recovery. I believe that it started especially being more spiritual, and now it's become a little bit more Christian, even though they do try to say that it is not. Bill W., when he created the 12 steps, did it after doing acid. So it was acid that actually triggered these steps to come to, made him open to receiving these steps. And at that point in time, it was their hope that everybody would be able to partake in this medicine and then follow these steps as a guideline for afterwards, right? So honestly, I do feel like my alternative recovery path takes a lot from the traditional path. I word things a little bit differently. And I also don't have sobriety as my goal or focus. I think that the sobriety doesn't even make sense to me. I think that's the first thing was like, I couldn't understand it because it's different to different people, right? Like some people will say that you've broken your sobriety if you drink kombucha, which has alcohol in it. Some people will say you're still in sobriety if you're on antidepressants or Adderall or anti-anxiety medicines, right? So there's really no clear way to define it. So I had to just eliminate that. Every time I tried to make sobriety be the goal, I failed. So my goal really became freedom, right? And what that looked like for me. And I, decided I wanted to be free to partake in any experience life has to offer me without worrying about giving my power away to the thing or to that experience. So there's a lot of aspects of traditional recovery that are about giving your power away again, right? Then to a sponsor because you're not capable of making your own decisions, or to the group and the fellowship in and of itself. And the biggest thing that I love about traditional recovery is the fellowship, which is why I'm working on creating at least to begin with, a virtual space for other people who are on this same path. But yeah, you're supposed to give your power away to a God that they don't recognize necessarily as you. So my 12 steps include surrendering this issue, this seemingly irresolvable issue, to spirit with the awareness that you are one with this spirit, and no thing or person, place, or thing, no thing has more power than you. Nothing outside of you is more powerful than you unless you give it to permission to be, unless you give it the power. And we especially do that with fear. So when we demonize our fear, these substances, these things that we have used, medicines that we could use to help us heal, when we demonize those things, we demonize a part of ourselves because we enjoyed it, right? So part of my recovery path and plan has been really truly working with really literally pretty much every spirit that there is, right? High vibrational, low vibrational, good, bad, doesn't matter. Spirit wanted me to understand the purpose for all of them, the different traumas that they might be showing or pointing to, right? I'm pretty good. I can typically understand what somebody's different trauma is or what chakra they're going to be working on based on what their drug of choice was and how addiction shows up for everybody. Because the other thing that I feel very differently about is that addiction is something everybody struggles with. We are not different or broken. In fact, it makes perfect fucking sense that highly sensitive, gifted mediums, channels, genius people, right, see a world and they don't fit in, and they see people hurting and they're hurting and they don't know how to cope. So they decide to explore it, which is really what we're doing. We are explorers. And so just by changing the mentality, starting there, changing the mentality of this guilt and shame, which addiction just is this shame cycle, right? When we can eliminate the guilt and the shame, we begin to love ourselves enough to make different choices. And again, I feel like addiction is something everybody wrestles with. For most people, it's going to show up as a phone or caffeine, relationships, the addiction to validation, jobs, to money, right? So we're not any different or weird. Honestly, what it is that we have less fear than most people. And what is the problem with people with less fear is that they're harder to control. We've already been to hell. Throw whatever the fuck you want at me, right? Because I can face it, I can do it. So that makes us harder to control, which is why I truly believe that people who really have gone down the path of substance abuse once this can be transformed in your life, and I am a living proof and miracle of this, we are the most powerful beings in existence, right? Which is why we are told we are broken. That is why we are told we will never heal and we will never recover, and that this is something we will never have freedom from. So I'm going to leave you with that. I will be sharing more about what my 12 steps are and look like. I want to share more about the spirit of all of these different substances, because they really are all a spirit, and they are all shapeshifters and can change shapes depending on what it is that you need. But learning how to work with this spirit in the sense of it being a relationship is definitely a really helpful tool. I've got lots of different practices and things that I use in my coaching practice that I'd love to share with you. So thanks so much for listening, and I hope you have a beautiful day.